Hello, and welcome to this training session on general user settings and password policies within Sage CRM. So in the next few minutes, we're going to be looking at two key administrative responsibilities: the setting of configuration options that affect all users, and then setting and controlling user password policies. And both these settings are critical for maintaining security, usability, and governance across Sage CRM. Now, we are making our way through this series of training lessons. We're now on the 9th of 10, covering security administration within Sage CRM. So we're looking today really at the tail end of the discussion that we've been having about users and the intersection of aspects such as the security profiles, territories, the idea of company teams, and the general exceptions to policy profiles such as the security policies can set. So this is another layer to the application security that we've been looking at, and this is governing now the experience that you would have as a user once you've logged on into the system. So really, by the end of this session, I hope you'll be able to know where you go, so how to navigate to the settings screen for user configuration, how you go through and understand all of the different system-wide settings that can affect all users, understand how you can control the logon behavior and session management for users, as well as the idea of setting expiry times for passwords and lockout rules as well. So we'll be defining and applying complex policies for passwords and really looking at the idea of this administration level configuration that applies across the system rather than individual user record settings. So that's what we're looking at in this lesson, and like all the other lessons within this series, it's being recorded, it'll be edited, and it will be made available on the Sage Support and Training YouTube channel, where it will join the others in this series inside the course all about security administration. But let's get going into the meat of today's session. So we're going to look at first at the idea of the common configurations that affect all users. And to do that, we need to go off and find that screen. So I'm going to switch over into my browser and I'm going to log on as a system administrator. And then I need to open up the profile as menu option and then go into administration, and then here we are inside administration, and then go down into security into the users area, and within users we've got the different options that we want, and we're interested in user configuration, and you'll see that on the bottom row in the central panel. So I've just clicked on there, so we're now in administration, users, user configuration, and so this is where all system-wide user behavior settings are controlled from this area. This screen does everything. Now, this is different from editing an individual user record. So changes made here will actually affect all users or a group of users in the system, but you can still override it, some of these settings, within the context of the individual user as well. Now, in order to start doing this, I'm going to click on change, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can make my screen zoom in to consider the different options. So let's have a zoom first, and what you can see is that I've zoomed in, and I've zoomed in to look at the first of the fields on the screen. So amount of days to password expiring. So this is our password expiry date setting, and it's the number of days before a password becomes invalid. And so if you've set it as it says here to 50 days, that means that the system is going to calculate each user's expiry date accordingly, and individual users will be able to see when their user, it's stored within the user table, so you can actually ensure that every user is aware of that with administration and with inclusion of the information in their logon screens as well. So you can actually have this echoed out into the user's experience, knowing how many days they've got before their password expires. This setting is a centralized control over the password renewal, but it only applies to users that are set at the individual level that their passwords must expire. And that's actually something that we saw when we were setting up users, that it is down to the level of the user. I'll come back onto the individual user experience a little bit later in the course. So although this is a global setting, it is something that can be overridden at the level of the user. And if we look at this next option, Sage CRM encrypts its passwords using bcrypt algorithms, so it is a very, very secure way of storing passwords inside Sage CRM. It uses this password hash. It's a dynamic password hash, and this cost is a setting that says when it's enabled, it will adjust the computational strength of the password hashing based on the server's own capability. So this is to ensure that passwords remain strongly protected over time, even if your hardware on the server improves. That means that the passwords on this server will also be improved. So, and it is recommended within most implementations to keep this enabled. The only reason why you might not want to do this is if there's specific compatibility issues that has been pointed out within your environment, but generally speaking, it is recommended to enable. It's particularly useful when Sage CRM is within an Azure or within an Amazon virtualized environment, and it is one of these settings within Sage CRM, which means that we are constantly working with evolving security standards as well. So please, the recommended setting is yes. If we have a look now at these next two fields, these are the account lockout threshold and the actual lockout duration. This is the number of failed attempts that a user may have before they're locked out of the system, and how long it is before they can attempt to get back in, again expressed in minutes. So here it's set to 3 failed attempts. They're locked out for 5 minutes. And the idea behind this is protecting against brute force password attempts. What I need to do is I just need to look at a related setting. So I'm just going to change the zoom level. Here I've flicked across into another field, which is user inactivity timeout, and this controls the automatic logout for a user after inactivity. That means no interaction with the screen, no clicks going back into the server. And if it's set to be 0, there is no timeout. But if it's set to be 10, it will be 10 minutes, and here it is default by 30 minutes. And this is important in environments where really you have a responsibility, or a system administrator has a responsibility, making sure that people don't access data. If somebody's stepped away from the screen for a while, they want to be able to make sure that everything goes dark and the user is logged out, so that you're not exposing data in environments which are shared traffic environments. Now, if I look above, this is actually the allow user preferences. This is a global setting that is not about passwords. It's not about other things other than the idea of the user preferences. It's just, is an individual user allowed to change their preferences, for example, as to what screen they should log on to, what dates formats that they should use, what currency formatting they should use. These are all all at the level of the user, and a system administrator may want to force a particular experience on people in order to simplify the environment for training purposes and for initial for the initial phases of the project. So allowing user preferences is a very useful flag to be able to balance flexibility and governance as to whether you want that. Let's zoom across to another field. And here you can see that I'm now looking at the auto logout. This is similar to the idea of the user inactivity timeout, but this is purpose of this is as the browser is closed, this will be a setting to make sure that there is a destruction or a follow-up to destroy the user session. So you'll see this very often when we come on to activities as the idea of a forced logout. So the auto logout ensures that when a browser window is closed, the server session is terminated, and it makes sure that there are no orphan sessions running. That's useful in an environment where you may be working with the idea of concurrent users rather than named user licensing model, and you always want to make sure that you are making best use of concurrent access. If we look across onto the next field here, you can see that this is the date format. Again, this is a system-wide default format for dates. It becomes the default for users, but it can be overridden by the individual user preferences as well. And this is ensuring regional consistency across implementations as well. Now I can look at the next field in here. This is a field that is really to do with a feature that is covered in some of the customization lessons called the Advanced Mail Manager. So there are lessons that are about that particular feature, but this is about filing. How do you want users to go ahead and file emails, whether they are going to be using the filing mechanism for when either directly inside Sage CRM, or are you going to be expecting the user to be filing it by copying emails towards the an email address monitored by the Advanced Mail Manager. When disabled, Sage CRM uses its standard mail filing mechanism, and that's the default setting. Now, that's covered in more detail within the training course about the Advanced Mail Manager. The enable security groups is an important setting for those people who are working with data across territory, and that typically is a marketing function. So this setting determines whether users can access information outside their home territory for marketing purposes when it's brought together into a group. So imagine that if you think back to the lessons that we had about the idea of security territories, someone like a marketing user who is working at the level of marketing within Europe may want to, or may be given the ability to create a group that looks at all companies, whether they are in the marketing area in worldwide marketing or within the US as well. And if they're given rights over data that sits in another territory to be able to see and view that query, if you like, or an existing query that is the basis of the group, will amalgamate maybe 1,000 records, of which that user, because they're in a narrow territory, can only see 250 of them. But they need to be able to see the full 1,000 in the context of the group in order to carry out the task like the mail out or the generation of letters, even if they can't then drill down into the group membership. So this is a setting that is a global setting to allow those people who are using groups to be able to access groups out data within groups that is outside their normal security rights, and it's to enable the marketing functions. If we now develop this idea, I'm actually going to go up. I've missed a couple of fields out here, and these are the use IIS auto login and the default domain for IIS login. Now, these two settings are all about a form of single sign-on that is possible within Sage CRM. And so this is allowing Sage CRM to authenticate users using their Windows network credentials instead of requiring a separate CRM username and password. And so this idea is that if you're already log on into Windows, you'll have used perhaps, excuse me, you might well have logged on as Susan May at panoplytech.com, where panoplytech.com is the domain and Susan May is the username. So these domains are automatically logged on if they are already if there's a match between the username, the username within inside Sage CRM and the username within inside Windows, and as the Windows machine expects. So the authentication is handled actually by IIS and the Internet Information Services, the web server, and Sage CRM passwords, and actually passwords policies, because we're no longer using CRM passwords, they're not used, but the login becomes seamless within a corporate network. And it is typically used in environments where Sage CRM is deployed internally and is integrated with Active Directory as well. So you'd provision your users using Active Directory, you'd have a match between all of the users set up with CRM, and then you could enable those users for IIS auto login. So looking in specifically at that, the default domain for IIS login is going to be the Windows domain that Sage CRM should use when validating the user. And as I've said, if your domain is panoplytech.com, then that's the domain name here. And that just avoids the need for users to enter the domain manually when they're entering their username and password, or setting, I should say, and then that carries through automatically. So it inherits it from where they've logged on into Windows. I'll take questions at the end, so if you'll hold on just for a little bit. With what we've got, if I leave this and look now at the idea of the user password policies within Sage CRM, we can see that here, where we've been looking at the user configuration, we now need to go and have a look at really the experience of the individual users. So I'm going to leave the screen. I'm going to be thinking about password experiences for the moment. But if I just leave this, I've come up to the level of the users again. I'm using the breadcrumb trail here in the top, and now going into where we've got our users, and I want to search for what existing users there are. I'm going to look for Susan May. I've talked about her before in previous lessons. I'm going to use, just click on her name. She's the first row in the information that's returned there. And if I scroll down, we can see the security information at this point. Now you can see there are some fields here. If I zoom in on these, password never expires, change password at next login, and counts change password. So password never expires when this is checked that the user's password will not follow the system-wide expiry date set in user configuration, and that means that the password will remain valid indefinitely. In all of the demo data that we ship, that is the setting. I would strongly advise that really the only purpose that you would have where for an individual user, they don't have this set to be true, or rather the only time that you'd have it set to be true is where it's a specific service account or it's a user ID that is used for integration or specific administrative exceptions, because then in some regards then forced expiry is not going to be helpful, is not going to it's likely to be a breaking change if you were to force expiry for integrations, for example. The field where we've got password at next logon, when this is selected, the user is forced to change their password at the next time they successfully log on. This is, if you like, you're setting up your users for the first time, this is probably what you would want to have for your users. So next time they log on, it should automatically force them to change their password, but it is then, once they've done that, it is cleared, and so that they don't have to keep on changing their passwords each time they log on. And it's commonly used in the two situations where it's a new user, so they've got a temporary password, or where the system administrator has gone through the manual process of changing the password for the user. And the last option there, which is can't change password, this is when the user is prevented from changing their own password, and so only a system administrator can change it. This is in environments in which passwords are centrally managed, when there are very strict IT policy restrictions around who may change whatever password. And these fields obviously work together with the global settings to fine-tune what's actually going ahead. So they're all about providing controlled exceptions without weakening whatever we've set within the user configuration screen. But it does mean that you have to be aware of what the user settings are to be absolutely sure. Now I've come back out of the user screen because what I want to do now is to switch into security and then go down into where we've got our let's see, password policies. There we can see on the second row, and here we can come into where we've got now the ability to set up our password policies. So password, if we're using CRM passwords, that means in environments where we are not using IIS auto login, password complexity and rules is set here. And there are three categories of users within Sage CRM. There are the system administrators. Within a default system like this, you've only got the one system administrator. Then you can have info managers as well. They tend to be the super users within which who have had further administrative tasks delegated to them. And then you have standard users who have no admin rights at all. And these three groups, once you've got them, you can start to set the rules that govern their passwords. And I'm going to go into users with no admin rights as my explanation. And you can see that here I've got a number of different fields, only really about half a dozen, six or seven screen fields. But let's have a look if we zoom in on these. So we've got, first of all, a setting that allows us to set the minimum password length. We've also got configurable information elsewhere, but let's just focus on that password length. It is configurable for each user group, so you might want your system administrators to have a longer password length than standard users, but longer passwords significantly improve security, and that would be the first rule that you go ahead and define. And if I have a look now at the idea of the maximum length of passwords, so this is a setting that defines the upper limit on how many characters a password contains, and this can be all about making sure that we're preventing issues with, like a maximum password might sound a little bit strange as to why you'd want to enforce, but actually for some integrations they can't cope with more than a certain password length. You avoid a certain excessive system usage with this. It ensures compatibility with some authentication components as well, and it certainly allows you to align with whatever is the corporate IT standards around password length as well. So in short, it's about making sure that we've got stability and compatibility with inside the password areas between other systems, but still allowing strong passwords within the limits that we set here on this screen. So considering now, we can enforce complex passwords, and this is really to do with the idea of requiring letters and numbers and to prevent simple passwords like 123456 or the word password, and the whole point is that complexity reduces vulnerability to attack. Now, when it comes to this field, as you can see, this checklist, this prevents the idea of the password matching a combination of the username as well. So you can't, Susan May would not now be able to go and choose Susan May as her password. And we can fine tune this with the next checkbox, which is to make sure that this option prevents reversed usernames, prevents the use of first name, last name with inside the passwords, and basically it prevents any of the certain dictionary words that you don't want people to use at this level when they're setting passwords. And there is a nice feature here, which is invalidate password reset link after how many minutes. Now, this is something inside Sage CRM to do with a feature called forgot password. Now, that's really all about, we'll look at this in a moment, but the forgot password feature is all about allowing users to request an email link to securely reset their password from the logon screen. And it only ever appears in systems that use the standard CRM password authentication on a server configured for HTTPS, and that also has the email settings correctly configured. So it doesn't appear when IIS Auto Login is enabled, because passwords are managed through Windows authentication instead of Sage CRM in those occasions, and it doesn't work on my machine because I'm not set up on HTTPS as well. But on this this field though is controlling how long the reset link would remain valid before it expires, and that reset link is I'll mention a second, is to do with that experience of generating a email when you're attempting to log on and you've forgotten your password, or you need to reset your password. Now, how does everything we've looked at so far work together? Well, they work together because the concept of security for passwords really is dependent on what we set within the user configuration. That's to do with expiry dates and lockout information. So we take the idea of user configuration and add to it the general password policies, which is to do with the complexity that we're enforcing on passwords, and then also combining that with the individual user override. So this security within Sage CRM is layered. It's highly layered. So user configuration controls expiry duration, the lockout, I should say, the timeout. Then the password policies are going to be to do with the complexities of the individual passwords, the structure of them, the validation rules, and then the exceptions come in at the individual level. But all of that provides comprehensive password governance. Now, if you are in a position where you have configured Sage CRM so that it is on HTTPS, you have configured the internal email to be able to send emails, then you will get then given to you a feature for the forgot my password. And this forgotten password process is something that as we've seen, users, the system administrator can control, but if it's enabled, users can then just check the box or click the link, I should say, and then reset their email via email. Otherwise, if we don't have that, then system administrators have to go through and handle the policy around passwords by resetting the password, unlocking accounts maybe, and also ensuring that the configuration of email is correct as well. So what is our best practice here? So our best practice is to make sure you're setting 8 to 12 character passwords, you're ensuring complexity within those passwords, that you're wanting to make sure that your account lockout is enabled, and that you apply the inactivity timeout. Once you've done that, you do need to review this regularly. And so security policies are all about balancing the usability with the protection of the data. So it's different industries will have different attitudes towards this, but highly regulated industries would certainly require shorter expiry cycles, stricter complexity, and to have the ability that any of the policies that we set align with the corporate IT standards. Okay, well, we're at the end of what I wanted to cover today. So we have looked at common user configuration settings. We've looked at the logon and session controls. We've dealt with password expiry and lockout. We've looked at the idea of setting whether we want to work with complex passwords, and we've considered some best practice as well. So user configuration is this core responsibility of Sage CRM administrators. When we correctly configure the system, we make sure that we are protecting it securely, and we can make sure that the whole system is properly governed, and we enhance that way the user experience. I'm going to say thank you very much for coming along and attending. We are at the end of the 9th lesson. We've got one more this week before the series comes to an end. And let's see if we've got any questions. In which case, I'm going to say thank you very much, everyone. I'm going to see you, I hope, at the next lesson tomorrow, which is our last lesson in the series. So thank you, everyone, for attending. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.